Walking Dead Season 4, Episode 3, titled Isolation. This episode was a pretty dialogue based episode, but it was actually really well done. And, that is what, The Walking Dead does well. Aside from scare everyone wondering who's going to die next, whenever everything's safe in a sense at least, the show is really good just with dialogue. People having to deal with certain things, like Tyrese having to deal with losing Sharon, I believe her name was, and everything going on with him in this episode. I feel like him more than anything was the focus. Just him, and really how they were gonna solve the virus seemed to be the main focus or focuses of this episode. It starts off right where the last episode left off, and Tyrese is basically there with everyone, and he's like, hey, they were burned. I went to see her. She was dead, and he's freaking out. This is the woman he loved, and she's dead. And then in the beginning of this episode, he's just angry, and it makes sense that he would be, but he's just losing it. And Rick and Daryl are trying to calm him down, and then he kind of snaps on Rick. Well, he snaps on Daryl first and kind of pushes him, and then he turns around, and it seemed like he was pretty calm after that. Like, he let Daryl go. It's like, all right, everything's done. But then he was mad at Rick, and he punched him. And before he even did that, I was like, Rick looks like he's about to lose it for like no apparent reason, and he ends up doing that because this scene led to the scene that we got in the preview where he's yelling at Daryl to get off of him, and it was from this episode. And I thought it was so weird that he just snapped like that, but I think it has to do with him kind of coming back into pretty much being in the action, so it kind of just amped him up super quick, and he just like snapped right back, and that's how it happened to be. But Tyrese is just like hulking out like angry black guy and just punching Rick, and then Rick snaps and punches him, and he just like won't stop until Daryl pulls him off. So now his hand's messed up. Tyrese has a black eye. They're both, and Rick has scratches and cuts on his face. So Tyrese has to deal with losing his girlfriend, and then his sister gets sick too in this episode, and they have their conversation, and so he's kind of losing everything. In the very first episode, he was freaking out. It's like, I hate killing the walkers like this at the gate, because when you're out there, it's different than when we're just stabbing him in the head at the gate. It seems different. And then he goes out and he's like, Nick dies, I believe that was the kid's name, and he's like, I don't really like it out there either. So he has that in episode 1. Then his girlfriend gets sick in episode 2, and then dies in the end of episode 2. And then this is just in episode 3, and he's towards the end of the episode, he's just like, he's when he's sitting in the car, it's almost to the point where he's thinking to himself, do I even want to like live at this point? Like, is there any point in me just like going on? But he does decide, I'm gonna keep moving on. And we get a cool scene where he's killing all the zombies with like the new and improved hammer time. He's just like bashing heads in, which is straight out of the comic, so I knew he wouldn't die from that. It was just really cool to have that. It was a lot different because it was in the comics, that's like when they first get to the prison almost, and this is obviously with the universes being different. It was cool just to have that scene in the episode. But he's killing all the zombies, and he survives in the end, and he does decide, I'm gonna keep going because I do at least have my sister. I do have a reason to keep pushing on in life. But he was dealing with so much crap in this episode, and he's just like angry and then just depressed, and he may have gone through the 7 stages, I guess, or if it's 7. But I guess he didn't go through bargaining or anything like that, but he went through some stages. He was angry, he was sad, he was accepted it towards the end, or at least decided to fight for that little bit for whatever reason. But it was good to see that he obviously didn't just die off in this episode, which would have been really stupid, honestly. It would have really sucked to see him go if he just like gave up and died. But it was a cool scene at the end. They're killing zombies left and right. Michonne's like just chopping heads off, she's jumping and slashing. Daryl like tomahawks one of the zombies. He throws the knife, and it just like kills it. And then the doctor, I thought he was gonna run out of bullets. I'm like, he needs to really be careful, because he's just like standing and he's trying to get Tyrese to like come on, but he's like putting himself in danger. But that's generally what people do in those situations. They try to help everyone else, even though that puts them in more danger. Because he's standing still, and he's yelling back like, Ty, come on, and then he has to turn around and shoot more zombies. But they all live, so they're going on to the next episode, and they did sort of tease us with Sanctuary being on the radio. Like they kind of heard it, but not really. So I think unless that's a deleted scene that they were showing, which they do all the time, if anyone never knew that, when you watch a preview for movies or TV shows, a lot of the times a random scene you'll see was either an alternate scene that wasn't put in the final episode, or it was just a deleted scene. So it might have been deleted, because I feel like there's no way they're going back to the Charger. But at the same time, when they talk about how far away the college was, with 50 miles, they'd either have to go back to that car to get it, which would also be hard with all the zombies coming out of the train. So they'd either have to go back to that after they've kind of passed on, or they just find a new car. But either way, kind of got teased with it. I don't know if they, like I said, they did officially delete that scene out of the episode, and that was the preview we got. We didn't, get in the episode, but from the preview, obviously, we have Sanctuary, so it has been at least slightly hinted a little bit more. So I'm excited for that, even though it's the smallest little thing. But they do all survive, which is great. And everything else I feel like was just everyone having to deal with, what are we gonna do? Who's gonna live? Who's gonna die? How long are people gonna live? With the group going out to the college, the veterinarian college, do these people have time? And obviously, Herschel makes a decision. He goes out, and he's in quarantine. He's perfectly healthy. Him, Carl, and some of the kids, and he decides, I'm gonna go out and get these berries to make a tea because it helps with the flu. And Carl says, if you're going to go out, I have to go with you. And they have a great moment. I really enjoyed that scene. It was very serene. They talk about how calm it is in the episode. And, they're out there talking. And, we get Carl in the hat, like the little gunslinger. And so, they're out there. And Herschel's talking to him, saying, like, how does it feel to, pretty much have your gun back and stuff like that. And they're going through things really calmly. And Herschel's on one side of the fence where he's like, I could have been safe out here on my own, and so serene and stuff, and we're practically safe, or like I feel like we're safe. And then right after that, Carl notices some zombies, and he says, no, we're not, but he doesn't have to kill them. And something they do in this episode, which was really subtle, and I didn't think of it until now, is that he didn't shoot that zombie, and it wasn't just because Herschel said you don't have to, but it's because it was kind of like that scene from the last season where it was Herschel and Carl, and Carl shot the kid, and then this episode it was a zombie, and it's like, I'm not hurting a single person, I'm not doing anything if I just shoot this zombie, because who would care at all? But he decides, I'm not gonna shoot this zombie because I don't have to, and there's no reason for it. And so you see he kind of has pulled back from that sort of like little serial killer type mode, and he's kind of calmed down. He's not just wasting bullets just to shoot something in the head because it's a walker or it's a potentially dangerous person. Although we would still kind of have to see, because not shooting a walker is completely different from deciding not to shoot another human. But I feel like that was kind of the writers giving us proof a little bit that Carl has decided to pull back on him, just pulling the trigger whenever he needs to, or whenever he wants to, really, and doesn't need to. But I thought that was a great moment that they had. And the line I love when Carl, he says it twice actually, when Herschel initially says, like, it was good you not having your gun and stuff, you like basically working with your dad. And Carl says, like, yeah, but it can't always be that way. And then when they're walking out of the forest, Herschel, like, he says it again, like, it was so peaceful. And Carl's like, yeah, it was. And when they start walking, he's like, it can't always be that way. And I just thought that was pretty cool. Like, things can't always be peaceful, and things can't always be just nice and happy. It just can't be that way. And Carl, I feel more than anyone would know that, because, he had to kill his own mother. And, so when you have to deal with something like that, I think it changes your look on the world. But I thought that was an amazing scene. And Herschel, I'm really hoping he doesn't die. Him and Glenn, two of the real main characters. Tyrese's sister, of course, but she was kind of added in last season with Tyrese. But Glenn got sick, and that worries me for a lot of different reasons. But in the end, I'm kind of like, it's Glenn. He just got married. I don't think they're gonna, kill him off because we barely got to see that, and we haven't got much out of him and Maggie at all this season. And they kind of teased them, having a baby and stuff. So, I think they're gonna kind of save Glenn. And then I look at Herschel, and that worries me for a ton of reasons too. And then I'm like, no, he's the old guy with one leg who doesn't fight anymore or never really did. He could really get killed off, and it would really suck to see that happen. But hopefully, they do get the antibiotics and everyone's safe. But he decides to go in, and I love the speech he gave. I feel like that's one of the best things they've ever done for Herschel, because he rarely gets the time to really have those speeches, and when he does, it's always really good. It's because it's always very serious, because otherwise he wouldn't spend his time like actually cussing. I think this is probably the second time or third time he's ever said like a curse word through the entire series. But it's kind of interesting. He's fighting against his daughter and against Rick, and he says like even now, or we've gone through all this stuff where you go out there, you're in danger, and now we're at the point where if you breathe, you're in danger. So you have to choose, who you breathe for and what you breathe for. So he decides to go in and help everyone who's sick. And then the one guy who's just like coughs right in his face. It's like, well, Herschel's got it. And obviously Herschel realizes that because there's just blood like splattered in his face. So he just, takes the mask off and wipes his face, and it's just like, I'm in it now. Of course, I'd be a little mad if I was Herschel, because it's like you could have kind of avoided that. But obviously, it's for television. The guy's coughing and stuff, and then he just, coughs in Herschel's face. But we have Herschel, we have all the other people who are in there, like kind of the guy who coughed on Herschel. I can't remember his name because I said it once, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna die. But we got him, Herschel, Glenn. I cannot remember Tyrese's sister's name, but she's in there, and I don't think she'll die off either. So I'm like, more than anyone, I'm worried for Herschel. But hopefully they all just get out, and it's just like, yay, at least these three people lived. Because when they show the which is Death Row, in case anyone forgot, when they first show it, they go in and they do it in steps. Like the first guy is like shaking his arm, like he's just looking down and shaking. The second woman is coughing blood, and then the third person they show is just dead. They died inside the cell block, and they're just locked up in the cage or in the room, and they're dead. And the guy comes and says, we have to kill him, because that's just how it is. When people die here, we have to kill them off because they're zombies. So it was crazy to see that they're just all locked in this room together, or in this cell block together on death row. And they're all sick, people are dying, you have to kill someone off when they die. More and more people are getting sick. It seems like everyone's sick except for main characters. So like the little girl who Carol gets attached to, she ends up sick too. And it seems like now it's just like Carol and Rick are the only two people who aren't sick. And then, I guess they're technically sick, but aren't like super sick. They're infected, but not sick. And then you have like Carl and of course Maggie's sister and the baby, and then other kids who are just completely cured. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. But just the last little bit in this episode that was amazing was the revelation that Carol was the one who killed Sharon and David. And it was such a calm response from her. Like, she had a lot in this episode too. Like, her emotional struggles just went up and down too. And now I think I understand, in the scene with the water, when she kind of gets really, really upset and like pushes the water down and stuff. I thought it was just because she was dealing with all this stuff. Like, the little girl got sick and everyone's getting sick, and Glenn and Tyrese's sister, and then like Sharon died, and this obviously affects Tyrese. But now I feel like she got so upset because she was the one who caused that problem. Because obviously Sharon and David both would have died anyway, but it was obviously a really big deal that she was the one who did it, and then she killed him off, and so she was like really really upset. And when Rick figures it out, he's like, you do anything for us, for the kids, for everybody else, to protect us, and he just says, like, did you kill Sharon and David? She's just like, yeah, and just walks away like it was nothing. And I guess he figured that out from when she went to sacrifice herself, pretty much to clear out the water, and she just went out on her own. And that kind of, it kind of gave him that final little clue, like she was the one who did this, because she's gotten to the point where she's trying to protect everyone. Like he knew about the kids, her teaching the kids how to use knives and stuff like that. And he saw just how she acted with everyone, and it's like, you're the one who did that because you care about everyone. You're looking at the whole picture and not just, the individual pieces, which is nice, but it's also unfortunate because, she did like torch two people. So really interesting development for Carol, and just her kind of being the killer. Like, they were sick, of course, but at the same time she did it to kind of protect everyone else. But it was a great episode. That's probably my favorite thing about it, was that, and of course the little end action scene, and mostly just Michonne like chopping zombies' heads off and stuff. But I thought the whole episode was really good. Tyrese had a lot of great development. Carol had a really interesting, and I would say like development twist type of development. But overall, love the episode, and can't wait to see what happens next week. Comment below, let me know what your favorite part was. And who do you want to live? If you had to pick one person out of, and it probably doesn't bode well for her, but Tyrese's sister, since I can't even remember her name, Glenn or Herschel, who would you choose to have, live if you had to pick one? So comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.